how are you? How's everything going?
I'm good, I'm good. Just, it's kind of sunny, so I'm
Mm.
trying to enjoy the sun a little bit, but just working and working out and stuff. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. How's lockdown been treating you? And now that we're sort of finally getting out of it.
Yeah, it's good. Like having the gyms has been so big for me, and then I'm going to train. One of my friends has a ring, so I'm gonna go rent it out next weekend, which is nice, so I can get back into the ring. But I'm just exhausted. Just I guess like leaving the house suddenly and
Mm.
like especially the gym and the workouts that I do as a wrestler. It's like
You
you
do feel
wake
way
up in
more
the
tired.
morning and you're like, what is happening?
You do feel way more tired, don't you? Just having
Yeah.
done nothing for so long and then getting back into it is just like so
Literally,
draining.
the smallest task, and you're like exhausted just because you've left the house, I guess, for the first time in like a very long time.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, what else have you been with it? Well, I know you're busy generally. You've got your YouTube and your Twitch and everything else as well. Like, have you done anything else to sort of keep busy during lockdown while wrestling's not been happening?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've just been trying to like study wrestling a lot, obviously, just watching it, practicing my promos,
Mm.
designing wrestling gear, thinking about character stuff, move set, working out. Obviously, you can work out from home, and I
Mm.
have a few bits of equipment. So, yeah, really been focused on wrestling and Twitch and YouTube. I have just tried to like relax a little bit for the first time, and I've taken up yoga, which is kind of good for wrestling. So, I guess it's still work in a sense, but I kind of just tried to relax because I'm a bit of a workaholic. I'm
Mm.
very go, go, go all the time. And, it is really important to relax. And I think lockdown really forced me to just chill out a little bit, especially at the start. I was like, you know what, then I'm just gonna relax and just try to do nothing. And that lasted about a week. But yeah, just trying to relax and just spend a bit more time with my family, I guess, because
Mm.
I live with my family.
Sure.
So the fact that we've all been like working from home has been chaotic, but it's been nice to actually see my family a little bit more because I always kind of miss them just because obviously at the weekends I'm wrestling and when I get back it's super late, so I never really get to see them.
Mm.
So it's been nice to spend a bit of time with them a year.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. Full year with everyone. I mean, talking about that, obviously, wrestling is slowly coming back, and you'll be back in wrestling soon with Rev Pro. Is that going to be your first match back? Because they announced that obviously last week.
Yes, as it stands, it will be my first match back. No big deal. Just run through. I'm so excited, and that's why I'm training now, just trying to get ready for it and trying to
Mm.
get into the ring and just get ready for that because it's such a big opportunity.
Yeah, sure. And something I wanted to ask is obviously you only started really 3 years ago. You had your debut in 2019, so you were only wrestling for a year before lockdown hit. As someone who's relatively new to the business, who's quite fresh to the business, how difficult was it to have just a year in and then have to have a year's break with nothing? Like, yeah, how much does that put you
Yeah, I
behind?
mean, it was obviously tough for everyone,
Mm.
but for me in my position, it was really hard because, as I said, I'd probably done about a year of shows. So I
Mm.
was just getting onto shows and really just getting the reps in because experience is so important. And that's how you're going to get good. That's how you're going to learn. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have to just improvise and figure it out and get comfortable. And that's really like that next level is being comfortable in the ring and being able to work and filling in those gaps. And I was doing the All Star Tour. So I was
Mm.
doing like a full week back to back shows of wrestling. I was doing other independent promotions in the UK as well. So I was really like, I mean, there was one time where I did, I think, 9 days back to back of shows. And I can't tell you how much I grew as a performer just from like getting all these reps in and doing all these shows. So I was literally, I did all of that. And then I beat Nina Samuels. I had my rematch with Nina Samuels. I beat Nina Samuels. I was on such a high. I was really just getting into that next phase of my
Mm.
career. And then lockdown hit. And for me, it was frustrating because I feel like I kind of have to go back a bit now and get comfortable again and learn to work again and get the reps again. Because I was just getting into that next phase, that more advanced phase, and it kind of just got taken away. And then I was also going to wrestle internationally too,
Mm.
which is going to be such a big learning experience, such an amazing life experience too. And to have that taken away, I kind of felt like I was at that next step in my career, starting
Mm.
to get those international bookings, starting to really feel myself in the ring. And then now I'm like, I'm not sure where I'm going to be. I'm hoping it's going to be like riding a bike
Mm.
where like you just don't forget it. And I'm sure it will be because I've been watching it a lot.
Mm.
But yeah, that was a frustrating thing, was just like I finally was just getting into my zone with it. I was really getting comfortable. And like you say, very early on, to just have it kind of stripped away was really hard. But hopefully we can come back soon and yeah.
Mm. And something you mentioned in there, which I didn't know, but I only found out doing my research for this chat, is that obviously your first match was against Nina Samuels, and your last match before lockdown was against Nina Samuels. Um, And obviously, lockdown something no one could have predicted. But as a year in the business, in terms of being able to gauge your learning curve over that year, how great was that to face the same opponent within that year space of time and really gauge how much you'd improved?
Yeah, it was really, really cool. I mean, I had Nina as my first ever match. She was my 10th match too, so I kind of had that little point in the middle to check. And then, of course, she was, I think, something like just under 40th was my Nina match. So, yeah, like you say, it was my first match and kind of like my last match, I guess. And yeah, just the growth in terms of just how I felt in there. Just like, I didn't feel lost. I didn't feel like too reliant on her. I didn't feel shaky. And like your first match, I don't know how you can ever describe it. Like I trained for a year before my first match. I was very prepared and everything like that, but nothing ever does prepare you for when you get in there. And like I remember there was a moment like she had me in a headlock and I just kind of looked around and it doesn't feel real, like. So for me, my debut match, it was incredible to work with Nina Samuels. She's so talented. And, to have her for my first match was amazing. And the story we told was awesome. But like to really get to appreciate it now that I was a little bit more experienced and I had learnt more. And it's really cool as well, I think, on the independent scene, because a lot of places don't have on demand and you don't really get that many storylines. You don't get these long-term things to kind of build character and tell stories. But for me, to kind of be able to revisit that and like, this was the woman I had my debut against, and then she cheated to beat me again, and then I get to finally have another match with her, and I beat her now, and I've learnt so much in that time, was really special to me because it was nice to be able to tell that story. It was nice to be able to, at this level, kind of have that arc. I always say it's like my origin story. I beat Nina Samuels. But yeah, just in terms of just like how I felt in there with her and like what we were able to do a little bit more. I think, like she was able to trust me with more things and just everything was just, it improved so much. And I'd love to work with her again. And I think we had just a really, really good match. And I was really proud of it because like you said, if you compare it to the first, just the growth was so good.
And you mentioned the international bookings. Obviously, I'm not going to, sort of pry and ask specifically which promotions, but I mean, getting back to that, what are the countries you're looking forward to hopefully visiting once wrestling comes back?
Well, I'd love to honour what I already had. So I was meant to go to Germany, Finland, France, Canada, America.
Wow,
quite a few
all
different
over.
Places. Yeah, a little bit busy. But yes, I'd love to honour that. But for me, like, I mean, obviously it depends with COVID because that's like the next step, isn't it? It's like, first of all, getting shows here and then it's like flying regulations and all of that. So I'm not sure 100% how it's going to work and every country is completely different. So for me, that's a goal that I've kind of put on the back burner a bit just because realistically, I'm not sure. But if it's something that's available and open, for me, like I just want to go everywhere. Like I really want to do it by myself and kind of get to travel the world in a way, just off my own back. Wrestling I think would be really cool to get that experience and to kind of travel. And I always vlog for my YouTube channel, so I share all of this kind of stuff, and I think it'd be really cool because I did wrestle in Northern Ireland and I wish like people could see it because it was like such a funny experience, like with the plane getting home, like it got stuck and everything, and I was like, I wish people could see what it's like to be a wrestler, and I'm gonna go to work tomorrow morning in the office, and like, so that's why I started vlogging. And I think to kind of take people on like an international tour would be really cool. So it's definitely one of my goals is just to kind of get everywhere and certainly just honor the places that I listed out because I was meant to go there, so hopefully I can.
And do you still have other work like you mentioned, like office work, things like that you're doing at the minute?
Yeah, so I've been doing it on and off. I'm actually fortunate enough that I've been making from YouTube and Twitch now. I'm making an income that's enough for me to not have to. So I did start doing bookkeeping from home, which was kind of nice because I got to work from home. So I was like, okay. So I literally had stopped. I'd quit my office job just before lockdown because I was making enough from wrestling and I was making enough from YouTube put together. And I was like, yes, like I'm going to bank on myself and I'm going to go for this because it means I can put more time into wrestling and into YouTube. And then lockdown happened and I was like, well, this isn't cute. But obviously like I just kind of do bookkeeping for a bunch of like local businesses to me, and like, they're not very big companies, so it'll only be like a day or two a week. So I've been doing that throughout lockdown, but I've kind of stopped now just because the wage I'm making means that I don't need to do that, and now I can focus all of my time into doing my YouTube, which is really important to me to kind of build that brand for myself and get to show people what my life is like. And now obviously with wrestling coming back, I want to be in the ring, I want to be in the gym like 4 or 5 hours a day. So yeah, at the moment I'm not, which is great. So fingers crossed it can stay like that, but you never know what might happen, so it's always good to have something to fall back onto. So if you are going to start wrestling, that is definitely my tip, because throughout the 2-3 years, I guess, if you count lockdown, it's been really, really helpful for me to have that to fall back on, because you just never know what might happen.
No, exactly. And I want to pick up on that because you mentioned on your YouTube as well that, wrestling was always that passion, that thing you wanted to get into. And you sort of went into it straight after you finished your like studies, finished school and everything. So was there not necessarily a backup, but was it between wrestling and something else? Was there always another option, or was it always wrestling that you solely wanted to go for?
It was always wrestling for me, but for my teachers and stuff, they were like, girl, because I'm pretty academic. I got like all A stars. I did really well in my exams, and like the fact that I wasn't going to uni was just honestly just the drama that caused it at my school.
They just felt heartbroken.
Honestly, they were just like, I got called in all the time, and they were like, and I applied for my unis. I got in, and I took a gap year. And I said, like, I'm open to it, but like my heart is just there, and like I've always just wanted wrestling, and I'm also realistic, but then I was like, why can't I do this? Like, I feel like I have all the tools and the work ethic and the ambition, and I'm willing to sacrifice to achieve what I want. Like, I don't think I'm being unrealistic, like I'm not here like, I want to be president, and like, it's like, okay, Mariah, but like, it's like I'm dreaming for something that I think is a big dream, but is an achievable dream. And so, I did my exams. I did really well because I was like, that's important too. You want that backup. That means in future, if I ever want to pursue something in terms of that, I've got everything ready for me. But like, I just always really wanted it. And my mum was like, you know what? Mariah's not going to budge. Like, that's what she wants to do. And my mum did always say, like, I was meant to be on the stage because I did a lot of acting. So I did a lot of theatre, and I did track and field. So I kind of had all the kind of moving parts. I just didn't have the wrestling bit. And then my dad was just like, you know what, if you get a job, you can do it. So I went and I trained to do bookkeeping, which is just it's such a good one to get. Like, that's really my advice. I mean, now technology's changing, so maybe we won't need bookkeepers anymore, but it's a really, I don't say easy course, but just like convenient. It's not too time consuming. If you're looking to wrestle, that's just a good 9 to 5 that's just not going to spill out of the 9 to 5. So you have your time to prioritize. So that was me. Like, I got my job, and then I had that to fall back on. And then obviously I pursued YouTube and everything like that. And you never know what doors that might open. And like, I never imagined YouTube would be giving me a full-time wage. That's crazy. But because when I started it, that's not why I started it. I just wanted to kind of share my life. But yeah, I just kind of made sure to have different things for myself, obviously bookkeeping, which is completely separate and it will always be there. YouTube, now I've got Twitch, you've got all these kind of different parts, and then of course wrestling, so you've got different baskets to take from. But yeah, it was definitely something I always wanted, and it took a lot of convincing for other people. But I think once my family kind of would just see, like, I was never in. So the first year I was training, I was just never home, because I worked 9 to 5, and then I was in the gym, and then I trained like 2-3 times a week in the ring. Like, I was just always gone, helping out, just constantly, just never in. And my parents were like, where is Mariah? Like, she's never here. Like, anytime anyone's like, we're gonna have a party on Saturday night, I'm like, I can't come, I'm training. And then I think when they come to see my first match, they got it. They were like, you know what, like, I get what she's doing, and we're really proud of you, and yeah, go on. But now I have that backup, which I think if anyone is going to pursue wrestling, like, I can't recommend it enough. I'm currently training to become a personal trainer as well. Just always have other things. And if lockdown has shown you anything, literally came out of nowhere, we could not have foreseen it. So just always have other things to fall back on,
Yeah, absolutely. No, well said. And also, you mentioned in other interviews and things your social media presence and how important that was to you when getting started wrestling. And I think that's really interesting, because I think that's something that not a lot of people think about straight off the bat when going into a business like wrestling. Like, what was the point when you realized you wanted to be a wrestler, that you realized, oh, I should get a strong social media following because that'll help me down the line?
Yeah, it kind of just happened. So when I was 18, I couldn't find a school to train at. And I was really like, I want to get started. Like, I want to do something. Like, I just felt like, I felt like I was getting old. Honestly, crazy, right? I was 18 and I was like, no, I'm going to miss my window. And so I was like, I really just want to build something for myself. Like, I want something to show my parents, to show my friends, to show people, like, this is me, like, this is what I want. And so I started trying to build like my Instagram up, because the great thing about social media is you don't have to know anyone to do well, and it can really open doors for you. Like, the amount of opportunities I've got just because people know me. It's not because, oh, she's got loads of followers. It's like, oh, I would never have heard of Mariah, but she come up on my my Instagram or my Twitter because, you know, you've got followers, so you get retweeted and stuff. And it's like the access you can get from social media to different opportunities, not just in wrestling, in all different industries, I think is really key. And I think is a great thing. Obviously, social media has a lot of flaws, but something great about it is you can get opportunities from it that you can earn yourself, you can build yourself. So I started doing social media. I just did like fashion modeling because I was doing modeling at that time too. Really a jack of all trades. Like and then, you know, I was kind of getting a couple followers, but like nothing really. And then my friends were just like, why don't you just post about wrestling? And I was like, oh, I just feel like no one will care. And they're like, yeah, like it's your thing. Like, why don't you just post about it? And so like I posted a picture and like I think it was a DX jersey that I had. Oh my gosh, like it just blew up. Like wrestling pages found me, like everything, and like it was amazing. And then that's how I ended up working with WWE Shop. They contacted me to send me merchandise to model, which was just an incredible, like honestly, at like 18 to get that, I was just so excited. So yeah, I guess I just always knew I wanted to build something. And I was kind of blindly going into it, not really knowing. And then I kind of figured it out. And I was like, why don't I just share my life? So then that's why I did my YouTube. That's why I did my Instagram. I wanted to share my journey. I wanted to share my passions, my interests, my wrestling. And, you know, with my YouTubes, like I said, I film my training, I film my matches, I film my on-the-road vlogs. I just wanted to give people like a look into my life. And I really enjoyed it just because I think it's really cool. And when I was 18 and I left school, I would love to have watched someone like me be like, this is how you do it, this is how you find a school, this is how you train, this is how it works, because I was terrified and just didn't know. And especially like years ago, there weren't like British wrestling has like boomed, there wasn't like as much, so I was definitely like navigating it blindly, and so I really just wanted to provide that access for people. But in the same token, I've had amazing opportunities because of it, and it is really important.
And what would you say then in terms of, I guess, people who want to do the same, who want to try and build a social media following like that? What is sort of, I guess, if there's one key bit of advice you can give, what would that be?
I think consistency and honesty. I know that's two things, but consistency is really important just because, you know, there's like an algorithm, so you want to keep feeding it basically. So you want to be consistent and regular with your posting, whatever it is you're doing, you know, whether you're fashion modeling, wrestling, whatever. So definitely consistency with what you're doing and planning for that. And then just like honesty, because like I said, I just post my fashion modeling because that's the pictures I had. And then my friends were like, just post about wrestling, just post about what you like. And then I post about what I liked, and, you know, the wrestling community found me and they were like, hello. And, you know, that kind of started it for me. So just be honest, be you, and be consistent with it.
Fab. And with things like YouTube and Twitch, and I guess even further afield, if you talk about things like, you know, Patreon or OnlyFans or whatever, with wrestlers being on these platforms, how important is it in you know, I guess in 2021 moving forward in such a social age that wrestlers, no matter what level you're at, give the fans that sort of peek behind the curtain as to who they really are outside the ring?
I think it's really important. I do get how it's tough. I think it's like there's certain wrestlers, like it is hard for us, and certain characters that it's tough for. But I do think just it's a hard balance to find. Like you want to always stay professional, but you do want it to feel personal in a way. So it's just about choosing what to post and like what's appropriate, and like maybe don't argue with like your broadband connector on your Twitter account, but like you can share wholesome content. But I do think it's really important, and it doesn't work for everyone. I will say that. Like there are certain characters and certain wrestlers that it doesn't suit. Like they should just post their wrestling content and leave it because it doesn't suit them. But you know, for many people like me or people who are really into that whole side of things, I think it's crucial to kind of, it's just so people know you, so people can find you and they can like follow you and stuff like that. And with OnlyFans and Patreon, I don't do them. And the reason I don't is because of the paywall. And so it's like people can't actually find that content, so you're not going to grow from that. So I would say if you are looking to kind of grow your brand, I would recommend public platforms like Twitter, like Twitch, YouTube, just because people can see everything and they can find you and you'll reach more people. But yeah, I think it's really important. We are in the age of social media, and it's very tricky to navigate, and it's very new and it's very different. And, you know, it's very different for wrestling because, you know, the curtain is always shut. But just try to share some of yourself. maybe visual workout videos or a little Q&A about you or some promos, which is great because you can just get them to so many people through posting it on Twitter, whereas before you'd be like emailing it to people. So yeah, I think it's really important. It's a great tool and great access that we have, and really make the most of it, but make it suit you and who you are.
Absolutely. And in terms of sort of like you mentioned there, again, also with sort of the peek behind the curtain, for yourself, whether it's YouTube or Twitch or anything, you know, compared to your in-ring work, where does Mariah May the person sort of start, and where does Mariah May the glamour end? You know, where's that link that sort of connects you? How far along the line is it that you're the same person?
Well, I think right now we're very much married because, you know, the glamour is all about just being yourself and letting yourself shine and never being put down by people's perceptions. And that's definitely something I relate to in real life. And, you know, if you watch like my wrestling journey and my first matches, it was just me, you know, the trainee, just, you know, and you saw all of that behind the scenes and you saw my work, and then you saw me like giving it my all in the ring. So right now I'm in a very snug position where like there's never anything that would conflict my character. Like I said, just don't argue with your broadband connector and you're fine. And so like, you know, all of my, to be fair, like when I do my pictures, I try to make everything suit the glamour. I try to make sure everything kind of fits in. Even when I work out, if I ever film it, I'm like, okay, the workout gear's got to be matching. Everything's got to be completely on point. So I do try to like, there are little things and little nuances that I try to keep going. But right now, my character and me, I'm just like a larger than life version of myself, or what I would like to be, I guess. But if I ever, you know, go a little bit dark and the glamour, you know, goes a little bit evil, I guess I'll have to try to navigate that, you know, and try to figure it out, especially for Twitch, like, you know, because that's a live stream and you're just kind of chatting with your fans, your community. That will be very different. And I think I would probably do it in character because I always do. So yeah, it's definitely interesting to kind of navigate these things. But right now, I'm fine. I haven't got to the tricky bit yet.
And with, I guess that, you know, you mentioned it there, and it's interesting because I had that sort of slate to ask you. You mentioned your definition of how you see the glamour as yourself in the ring, and you're that sort of very self-confident, that sort of, you know, body confidence side of thing. You know, no matter who you are, be comfortable with yourself, which is fantastic. And I think some people might hear the word glamour and maybe not necessarily associate with that, but more associated with, you know, like high fashion, things like that sort of thing. Just, you know, solely that sort of thing. So what would your definition of glamour be?
So that's why I like it, because like when you hear the word glamorous, you would think of someone just like very like well dressed and maybe up themselves. And then you see me and it's like, oh, like, you know, she wears nice sparkly stuff, but she's like a nice person and she's full of energy and bubbly. And so, like, I like the fact that the word itself kind of shatters perceptions. Because, like, when I started wrestling, I felt like I was very judged just because I did modeling, which I found really hurtful at first. It's like, I'm a childhood wrestling fan. Who are you to tell me I don't love it? And I worked really hard. I sacrificed a lot. You know, I had no social life. I didn't see any of my friends because this was what I wanted. I wanted to wrestle. And, you know, I worked so hard and I felt like people looked at me and they took one look and they're like, oh, she's a model. Oh, she's an Instagram girl, you know? And they just judged me. And I was really told all the time to suppress that side of me. Don't wear pink. I came out to the Offspring, which great song, but not me. You know, like I felt like, you know, at the start of my career, I was just made to be everything I'm not. And I didn't think that was right. And I didn't think that was fair. Why shouldn't I be me? Yes, I wear pink. Yes, I'm glamorous. I still work really hard. I spend 5 hours in the gym. I don't miss a training session in the ring. I'm there all the time. And I don't feel like they should have to conflict each other. So for me, the glamour was about being who you are and embracing that side. If it's a sparkly, glamorous, pink, golden side, then yeah, embrace it. If it's, you know, wearing studs and wearing black, embrace it. Be you and be who you are, and you should never be ashamed. So when I go through the curtain, I come through to Ariana Grande. No one comes out to a pop song. So I immediately stand out. I come out in pink, I'm full of energy, I'm bubbly, I'm full of life, and the kids are all up on their feet and everyone loves it. And that's what it's about. It's about being you and letting that shine, because the minute I started being myself and I started being the glamour, that's when it resonated with audiences, and that's when they actually were like receptive to me more than just, oh, you know, yeah, okay, cool. You know, they actually kind of bought into it more because it was genuine, it was authentic, it was a larger than life version of me. So the glamour is all about shattering perceptions. And like you say, you might hear the name and think, oh, what is that? And then you see me, and again, you've shattered that perception, which I really like. And then, of course, if the glamour ever went evil, then the glamour would be the glamour. So it's a really like double entendre. It works in a lot of ways, and I think it's cool because it can stay with me wherever my career may take me, whether I stay a baby face or I go heel. I like the fact that I'm not going to have a complete, rebrand.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a twist, which I always like in wrestling when it's just a twist,
It's definitely a sort of persona that works well as a heel, that would work, like, embed itself well as a heel sort of character.
Yeah, definitely.
But do you think, it's interesting you mentioned that, though, because as a childhood WWE fan, as someone who grew up, I probably imagine you probably started watching wrestling probably about the start of the Ruthless Aggression era, I would imagine. Yeah. So as someone who saw the likes of, Trish and Lita, but also the likes of, I guess, Tori and Candice Michelle, things like that, do you think that's where, I guess, that sort of word glamour and that sort of look can have that detrimental effect because those divas weren't given a lot of time in the ring because it was all about a certain type of look? And that's how people equate glamour.
I definitely do. I think, like Tori and Trish Lita, like that's like a bit more of a complicated era. But if you think to like maybe... when the Bella Twins kind of first started, that era, like where they got a lot of models in and they didn't get to have a lot of matches, I think people got a really negative perception of like any girl that's like remotely good looking or does modeling, like you must hate wrestling. And it's like, no, like maybe we do like it, that is a possibility, like it's kind of like when girls are like, oh, I like football, and they're like, really? What's Wayne Rooney's first child called? And it's like, dude, like chill. So I do think maybe that's where it comes from, which I feel very defensive over because it's not their fault. They came in and that was the job they were given. And if you watch interviews and you watch backstage stuff, you see how much they wanted to do more and how much they pushed for certain things, like Trish getting pushed off the stage into like the pudding or whatever, it was like mud or something. They always push for that extra something. And now we're fortunate enough to be in a time where two black women were the main event of WrestleMania, and women main event of WrestleMania a few years ago. So like we're getting to that spot, but back then they didn't always get that. And you're 100% right. Like that is where it comes from. It's that like, oh well, yeah, she's a model, she just wants to do that. And it's like, you know what? Like I'm not going to discredit these women because they're part of the reason that I wanted to wrestle. Like Trish, in my opinion, is the greatest of all time. Mickie James, the Bella Twins, and like the Bella Twins got to be in the era where they got to wrestle, which was really cool. But like Kelly and stuff, they didn't get to do that. They didn't get to have those matches. And like I'm a massive diva fan. Like I love them, and I think for what they were given, they killed it every single time and they entertained the crowd. And that is what it's all about. And they're a massive inspiration to me. And that is why that's even more why I wanted to include it, is because like I wanted to kind of do it for them and be like, yeah, you're allowed to be glamorous. It doesn't mean I'm not going to kick your ass. I'm just going to look great whilst I do it. And I really wanted to honor that. And I do think that's where it comes from. So that's why I think it's cool to kind of carry that through and be like, no, I work really hard. I just look glamorous doing it.
And that's something else I want to pick up on as sort of like a nice little, I guess, sort of side feature, is if I were to speak to Mariah May, the glamour, the wrestler, the in-ring performer, and say to you, give me your 3-point, 5-point plan for how to be glamorous, what would that be?
Well, first of all, I would say just be yourself and just be larger than life with it is my first point, because the thing about the glamour is, for me personally, like the things I love is like I do love pink and I do love sparkles and, having like curly hair and stuff. And that's just me. But I say the first thing is being yourself. But if you want to be glamorous like me, point number 2 is to buy something pink. Point number 3 is to buy something sparkly. Point number 4 is to curl your hair. And point number 5 is to be energetic. Just be big and be bold.
Fab, brilliant, perfect. We'll make sure we put that out. Everyone will be doing it around our Grapple Theory office. We'll all be looking pretty glam. It'll be fab. Brilliant. And then I wanted to move on to still with the social theme, I guess, because another thing that a lot of wrestlers have now is Cameo, which you have yourself.
Yeah.
How does that differ in terms of something like YouTube or Twitch, where you're actively getting requests, you're sort of having people ask you for things, ask you to do certain things, or say certain things, or give a certain message? How different is that in terms of producing content to something like YouTube or Twitch?
So, like, for me, a lot of people like, can you do cameo? Because I've got a lot of American fans. So with British fans, I was actually starting to meet them at shows and, they could get a picture with me or they could get a little shout out video because you're literally right there. And like with my American fans, they never had that access and they asked for cameo, and I never considered it. Like I just completely wrote off, which is something I'm trying to not do. And I'm trying to be more open-minded about how like technology evolves and our access to people evolves. And then over lockdown, people were like, you should do it, because it's kind of like the equivalent of a meet and greet. And I don't think it's that different, to be honest, because like the ones I get are normally like, can I have some fitness advice? Which I do YouTube videos on fitness. I get like happy birthdays. I get, just shout outs to people, like, can you get a shout out from my friend? It's their birthday and stuff. Which for me is actually the same as just sitting down and especially doing Twitch, because for Twitch I just talk to people. So it's literally like that. The one thing I will say though is like there are a couple of creeps on there. And the things people ask is just absolutely insane, which obviously I immediately decline and report, because that's not me and that's not something I do. And it makes me really uncomfortable that a platform like Cameo, which is not for anything gross or, anything, some people are like, it's really annoying. That's the one annoying thing, I think. But you kind of get that on everything. Like I get that on Instagram. I get, weird messages and creepy requests and just weird things. And I think, especially when you're a women's wrestler, you get it a lot, which is really disheartening, because I don't think you do that to my male counterpart. So it's really upsetting that you would do it to me. But aside from that, that's the one negative. But it's really easy to just decline it and report it. So Cameo is really good like that. But yeah, it's just like happy birthday and sending well wishes. And it's a bit strange. Like I'd rather like do it at a show, but you can't in lockdown. So I like that you can kind of still give someone like a nice message or something happy, or like some people ask for like advice, they're going to start training or their friend's going to start training and stuff, which I think is really cool to send a message to them. So yeah, I think it's pretty similar to YouTube and Twitch. Pretty similar. And
you mentioned like the sort of like the creepy messages there, and that sort of brings me on to something that I'd say, I guess answer as best you can or as much as you want to, because obviously COVID in the last year wasn't the only thing that affected wrestling. And we had the whole speaking out movement, and as a fan, and all my like Grapple theory counterparts, looking at it, it's heartbreaking to see the amount of stuff that was coming out. But is it just wrestlers that need to be aware of this? Like you say, there are fans that can send like creepy messages and not understand that boundary. Is it fans as well who need to understand that these are people, you've got to respect their privacy, you've got to respect the certain boundaries there are in wrestling.
Yeah, I definitely think both fans and wrestlers should be aware of it. I think we all can be educated and we all can learn more. But I think the kind of person that just message you like, can I have feet pics? There's no helping them, they're the kind of things you just have to, it's really, really sad, but you just have to brush off and you just, you know what I mean? Just ignore it. But in terms of like speaking out and the wider issues that were spoken about there, I do think fans need to be aware of it for sure and just know those boundaries at shows. And like personally, I've only been wrestling for a year though. I've never ever had like in-person fans ever overstep or be weird or uncomfortable. But, there were conversations about that I think were important and just being aware. But for me, largely with speaking out, I think the main issue was people in positions of power, which would tend to be coaches of wrestling schools or maybe more experienced wrestlers who have a lot of connections in the industry. I think that was really the main issue, just because the power is where the danger lies, and the access that they can have and the things that they can do. So I think it's great that this was a conversation that was had, and I think it's great that fans are like aware of that and checking themselves. I think that's really good to hear. Like that's really like that makes you feel good. It's like, damn, like these are good people and they're checking themselves. But yeah, I've never had any bad experiences. You're always going to get weird, you're always going to get weird people. I feel like whatever you do online, you just got to ignore it. But yeah, I think my hope with speaking out is just that there's some sort of regulation with just like training schools and the power that these people have. But mainly, out speaking out, I do think it's on the wrestlers and the fans now to just, because unfortunately not all the horrible people are gone, and unfortunately I don't think we're going to get anything to help prevent it happening again. So I just think it's on the fans and the wrestlers now to just be aware and be accountable and help each other and make sure the support's going to the right place and just not supporting these people, just cutting them off,
Yeah, absolutely. And did you have you seen all the stuff that the government's got going on at the minute with BritWres and talking about the future of it? I was going to ask about that because there's a lot of things on Twitter, BBC reporting it, especially the sort of, in my mind, I don't know if you'd seen the reports, but it seems like they're not taking it fully seriously. You know what I mean? They're putting wrestling puns in there, and I think that sort of turns people off. You know what I mean? People outside the industry who don't know about it, who don't care about it, are going to look at it and think, oh, it's just like a silly thing about wrestling, and not understand the gravity of what's actually going on.
Yeah, I have been keeping up with it, and I did see that, and it's hard. It's because from our side, and being, whether it's a hardcore wrestling fan, being a British wrestling fan, being a British wrestler, and with speaking out and like personal experiences and seeing what other people have gone through, you're like, oh my gosh, like people were hurt so badly, and why is it like so like hard, like, you know. But then the other side of it could be that, you know, if you come in full force with all of this stuff, the government are never going to want to help you. So I understand why they might be trying to position it more as like, you know, this is a training sport and then it's theatre once it's on shows, and it needs to, and it absolutely should. Like the fact that people under 18 are training, well, we need support then, you know, or they should not be training because it's just so dangerous. Yeah, it's a very tricky situation. I sometimes find it hard to read. And like I said before, I think honestly, like our best hope, I truly hope and pray that we get some sort of help for the future generations, because it will just happen again. And, you know, there are certain wrestlers that are still okay to be friends with people who have done horrific things. And you know, like, unfortunately, they work for opportunity, not for morals. And I think that is why we need that regulation. But if we don't get that, you know, what we have seen is fans standing up for it. And fans are the ones that are saying, I'm not going to support the show because you're using someone who's an abuser, or they've done other horrible things, you know, and I'm not going to support this. And I think that's important, is fans have this power. You can't have wrestling without fans, whether it's paying for your on-demand service like they have in lockdown, or buying the tickets to the shows. There isn't a wrestling without fans. There's no wrestling world I would want to live in without fans. They make the show. That's why I do it. And so I think it's important that fans now have access to information that before wrestlers only knew, which I think is good. You guys are like aware of, like, you know, what's going on and who's who and who's done what. And I think it's just about voting with your pockets. It's about having that moral standpoint. And for wrestlers, it's about turning down things because it's immoral. You know, I've said no to certain things because they're working with people who have been called out. You know, I've refused to work with things. I've used safeguarding. I've used the different whistleblowing techniques. And I think we do have more now than we had before. We're not there. We're not there, but we have more. And we do also have our own decisions and our own power. And I think it's just about the fans standing up for what they believe. And it shouldn't be on the fans, but, you know, luckily they're the ones that seem to be carrying British wrestling, in my opinion.
And how, I guess, during the whole movement, how heartening was it? You know, not obviously that it happened, because it was heartbreaking to see that so many wrestlers that we all love had gone through these experiences. But how heartening was it seeing that, you know, almost instantly all these wrestlers were coming out at the same time, you know, telling their stories and not being, you know, I guess, afraid or fearful anymore to be able to put that out there.
Yeah, I think it was a really hard feeling to explain, just the whole time period. But I'm so proud of the people that spoke out, and I'm so proud of them, because it's not easy. And, you know, for me personally, seeing, you know, other people go through experiences similar to mine it's weird, because it was like horrible to hear, because it's like, damn, this is really happening everywhere. But then it was also like, you felt like you had something in common with them, and you're not alone in this, which was nice. But yeah, I'm really proud of everyone that spoke out, and I'm glad that people know the truth, I think is my point. You know, I was saying before, like, I think it's on the, you know, the fans. I'm glad they know, because now they know who to support and who not to. Because unfortunately, like, whether it's because they're scared or whether it's because they just don't care, wrestlers have never stood up to these people. And I get it, because like, you're not going to stand up to someone who's got power, even if they're a bad person, because you might ruin your own career, or like, you just might not care. Like, you're just after yourself. So I think it's good that the fans know, because the fans can be impartial and they can just be like, no, we're not going to support this. And these people that spoke out can continue to get support, because there are still people suffering, and there are still people who aren't out of the woods yet. And, you know, I'm glad everyone spoke out, and I just hope that the wrestling community continue to support these people, and just remember all of the stories told in June, just in case the government don't help. That's what's really important.
No, sure. And as someone who'd only, again, been in the ring for a year at that point, when it all came out, was there a part of you that considered not coming back to wrestling?
No, never. Like, I love wrestling, and like, you'll never take my dreams from me. Like, I have sacrificed and fought so hard for this, and had to overcome so much all the time. And not all of the things I've overcome are online, but it doesn't mean that I wasn't fighting for different things. And, you know, nothing worth having comes easy. And, you know, I get why people saw it, and they just were like, oh my God, I just don't want to do it anymore. I've had conversations with phenomenal wrestlers and great human beings that didn't want to come back because they just felt so disheartened, or they'd had experiences themselves. And I think the worst point was actually after speaking out, when some of the people who spoke out against kind of crawled back in, and they're trying to stay in despite everyone and the fans being like, no, but because other wrestlers are supporting them, and these are these people's co-workers, these people, you know, and they're supporting someone who's done something awful. There was a lot of disheartening things like that, and there were people who didn't want to step back. And, you know, I said to people, it's completely your choice, but if you step back, these people win. You leave it as an open field for them. So the fans have to deal with this person, other wrestlers have to deal with this person. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here. I'll be standing up for what's right. I'm going to be on the shows. I'm on loads of shows. There will not be any of this happening under my nose. And I'm not going anywhere. This is my dream. I've worked very hard, and I'm continuing to work very hard for this. So I'm not leaving. And I really hope that, you know, the people that were considering it, just fight for your dreams. Like, don't let these monsters take that away from you.
Brilliant. No, perfect advice. I don't think I could have said any better. That's brilliant. And moving on to something, I guess, more positive again. We mentioned that year you had in the ring, you know, your whole almost revenge arc with Nina Samuels, and you know, you got your first win, I think, after your first, like, was it 4 or 5 matches, something like that, which is quite fast generally as someone just starting up in the business. And you also obviously had a WWE tryout. You mentioned you were getting international bookings that obviously haven't come to fruition yet, but should do hopefully in the future. Do you look back on that first year as, I mean, it must be like a roller coaster, right, with all that happening within your first year in the business?
Yeah, like, it was crazy because, like I said, I trained for a year, which is a very long time. Like, I wasn't able to do shows for a whole year. And so it was like, once it started. And, you know, it was just one thing after another. But because I had worked so hard and I prepared, and even before I started wrestling training, I was training in the gym, I was watching wrestling, I was trying to understand it. I was listening to interviews with different wrestlers who have been in the industry for a long time, trying to just learn, you know, respect. Like, for example, shaking everyone's hand when you go into a room, just different things like that. Just so, like, when that moment came, I was ready. And, like, I had been manifesting, like, a WWE tryout since I was, like, a kid. Like, I'd been thinking about it, everything about it. So when that time came, even though it was so early on, and when I got the email, I honestly thought, like, it was a prank. And I had to check. I was like, I checked with someone. I was like, is this real? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, but I've had 3 matches. Like, you know, like, I was like, what is happening? And it was really surreal, really crazy. But I feel like when you really want something, and, like, I've been thinking about it for so long, and I've been working so hard for it, like, I was just ready, you know. And that is the advice I try to give people, is like, you know, even if you can't get into a ring, because I have people like, oh, I'm not allowed to train yet, but, like, what can I do? And I'm like, just start working out, just start getting your conditioning up, just start watching this, doing this, because you can prepare yourself in other ways for it. And I felt like, even though it was really crazy, you know, like I went to help out at Progress to do the crew, and I had to step in, and I got to wrestle in Progress for, like, my 4th match, I think, against Candy Floss, who was incredible. And so, like, what an amazing experience. And, like, it literally, I had about 6 hours to prepare. But, you know, if you train hard, when that opportunity arises, you're ready for it. And I think with the WWE tryout, with Progress, and with these international bookings, and just the crazy first year I had, because I had worked really hard and I was really focused, even though it was kind of crazy and pinch me moments, I was ready for them.